Dr. Sastry, can you please give a preamble to the whole economic crisis in Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka is a small nation and is an island nation with a population of 2,21,56,000 people, and it has a GDP in terms of PPP of $306.9 billion with a per capita income of $13,909 US, which is considered to be the second highest in South Asian region. Also, in terms of GDP at nominal rates, the GDP of Sri Lanka is of the size of 84.53 billion, and again at nominal rates the per capita income is around $3,830. Historically, Sri Lanka has a long civil war of 26 years, which ended almost in 2009. From then, the economy of Sri Lanka revived substantially, and it went on showing a growth rate anywhere between 8 to 9% for about few years till 2013. In 2013, when the commodity prices have actually declined, at that point of time, their export realization has come down and import bill was substantially high. That's from where they started having balance of payments problem, that is to say the negative balance of payment, leading to a kind of borrowing to fill that deficit. So from then the country went on borrowing to fill its deficit balance of payments amount, and over a period of time the cumulative impact of that has gone up to the extent of almost 84.56% of its GDP by about 2019, and in a short span of say 2 years again that went up to 101%. That is to say, today the Sri Lankan debt is almost equal to its GDP levels, just slightly higher to its GDP levels. So the debt servicing is a burden on the part of Sri Lankan economy at this point of time, because the Sri Lankan budget per annum is 11% of its GDP, but its revenues in terms of direct taxes and indirect taxes and other government revenue sources, the revenues are to the tune of around $10.5 billion, but the annual expenditure all in all put together comes to around $16 billion. That's where the deficit funding, the deficit financing of the budget is a kind of barometer for the kind of borrowings that the Sri Lankan government has been doing for the past several years, which has led to the current problem. So this current problem has to be seen from the perspective of increased borrowings. So what? Increased borrowings leads to what kind of financial debacle that we need to see. Increased borrowings commensurating a kind of similar increase in the revenue levels. If it is there, then there won't be any problem. But in the case of Sri Lanka, there were several political policy decisions which were populist in nature, but led to the country's economic debacle in terms of reduced revenue collections. That is because the earlier president, that is to say in 2015, the president was Mr. Mahendra Rajapaksa, who was defeated at that time, was again re-elected in 2020, and in 2020 in a different form, in the sense that in 2020 his brother became the president of Sri Lanka, that is Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He has become the president. He was earlier the defense chief of Sri Lanka, and once he became the president, he made his erstwhile president brother Mr. Mahendra Rajapaksa as the prime minister, And from his family, again, there are about 5 members who occupies various significant positions in the parliament of Sri Lanka. So it has become, say, a kind of family rule, no issues, but the basic issue there was when the elections were about to take place in 2019-20, the Rajapaksas went on big time electioneering promises which were beyond the reach of Sri Lankan revenues, in the sense that they have huge populist announcements to win the elections, and they won the elections. Those populist policies have led to the current problem at this point of time, enjoined by what you call the increasing debt servicing problem. So all problems at one go made the Sri Lankan economy to what it is today, with a deficit of almost $1 billion in terms of balance of payments amount, and with a current account deficit of 3/4 of its balance of payments deficit, that is to say around $750 to $775 million deficit, which the government is currently facing.
Dr. Sastry, can you please identify the contributors to Sri Lankan GDP?
Sri Lankan economy majorly consists of tourism, which is its main revenue earner in terms of forex, followed by tea exports, clothing, garments, rice production, and other agri products. Combined together, they provide the export revenue for the country in terms of forex. Besides that, when we want to again look at the agri sector of Sri Lanka at the micro level, the major contributors to its exchequer are cinnamon, rubber, Ceylon tea, which has its own brand internationally for its exports, plus the overseas remittances. Most of the Sri Lankans staying in Middle East countries contribute to its forex reserves substantially in terms of their remittances to their motherland. When we want to bifurcate its economy into various segments, then its services sector contributes to around 60% of its economy, and its industrial sector contributes to around 28%, and its agri sector contributes to its 12% of its economic size. Again, when we want to classify that in terms of private sector contribution and public sector contribution, 85% of Sri Lanka's GDP is contributed by private sector, and 15% of its GDP is contributed by its public sector. So, in terms of trade partners, again, when we want to see the major trade partners of Sri Lanka, China, India, and USA counts a lot, because they are the predominant trading partners with Sri Lanka.
In your opinion, what actually has triggered this economic crisis?
The populist policies of the populist government of SPP led by Rajapaksas have increased its economic woes substantially, because when they have tried to implement the election promises, that has led to supply side problems substantially, which is called as supply chain breakdown. Supply chain breakdown has taken place in Sri Lanka in two ways. One is from the internal side, that is within Sri Lanka. One is from the external side, that is through imports. So the supply side, which can be met through domestic generation, couldn't happen because Sri Lanka has put a ban on fertilizers import to reduce its negative balance of payments problem which it was faced with. So when they banned the fertilizers, they have implemented 100% usage of organic farming methods with the advice of environmental activists like Vandana Shiva from India and those policies led to reduction in the production of domestic produce. The reduction was so substantial that within a span of 9 months, the paddy production has come down by 25%, and the tea production has come down by 35%, and the coconut production has come down by 30%, and over a span of 10 to 11 months, the production has come down by 50%, making the supply side, the produce, so scarce that the supplies were not available to the people, and for the supplies, the country was majorly dependent on the imports. And again, to import, since its balance of payments position was already negative, it didn't have forex reserves to import more into their country, and that led to again import side problems. So all are put together, the supply chain breakdown has put the people in a complete chaos today, because today you find big queues for fuel in terms of diesel, petrol or kerosene, the cooking oil, or gasoline, gas, whatever you say, they are not in a position to supply because supplies are not there as the demand to be met. And even the essential commodities are in scarce because the production domestically has reduced by 50%, and to import, the country doesn't have the required forex reserves. So given this situation, Sri Lanka is in a deep supply chain breakdown problem. Unless this is prevented, we are going to find a big humanitarian crisis, because people may find it difficult to find 2 square meals a day going forward, unless these supply chain issues are addressed by its trading partners, including China, India and USA, and even the World Economic Funds, including IMF and World Bank. Unless they come to its rescue on urgent basis, there won't be any quick solution for this big humanitarian problem which is emerging because of various issues culminating together into a big issue, and that big issue breaking down the supply chain, leading to humanitarian crisis. The Rajapaksa's public policies in terms of reduction in taxes also has led to reduction in revenue collections of the country, because before elections they have promised to lower tax rates, and they have also promised wide-ranging SOPs to farming sector. VAT was reduced from 15 to 8%, and VAT threshold limit has been increased from LKR 12 million to LKR 300 million, thus reducing the number of VAT payers. And then the annual income individual threshold limits also have been increased from LKR 5 lakhs to LKR 30 lakhs, thus again reducing number of individual taxpayers. And again, they have also abolished certain taxes like national building tax, payee tax, and economic services charges. They have abolished, and by abolishing all these taxes and by reducing the VAT in terms of percentage and in terms of the number of people under its coverage, they have in fact reduced its public revenues by 33.5%, which is almost equivalent to its 2% of GDP. So a 2% reduction in GDP from the revenue collection has further increased its budget deficits, which is again a problem for them to meet the budget deficits again, and increased import bill leading to balance of payments problem, increasing the burden of external debt and debt servicing, that again emerging as a big problem. Added to that, self-made problem due to policy measures like banning of fertilizers leading to reduction in the domestic production by about 50%, leading to supply side crisis. All these things put together, today Sri Lanka is almost touched a rock bottom level.
Finally, Dr. Sastry, as an international economist, what is the solution you suggest for the ongoing Sri Lankan crisis?
Now, a rescue package is required for its economy, and the rescue package must be to the tune of, say, at least a $5 billion to immediately to deal with the supply chain breakdown and make the supplies regular, and then maybe some reschedulements of its loans and rescheduling its interest burden again by adding it to the principal by the world lending agencies may help it to augur its internal generation of food production, because they have already lifted the ban on the part of fertilizers. But they should now be in a position to import the fertilizers to support their agricultural production. Once that takes place, the humanitarian crisis can be reduced to substantial level. To do that, they require definitely forex help. That help can be extended by its trading partners, keeping in mind the current and future trade relations that the bilateral trade those respective countries have, and also even the international lending agencies may also take a humanitarian call, because the problem is solvable. Okay, no problem is unsolvable. We have earlier seen financial problems faced by Greece, Italy, and most of the major European countries, including Spain, and they recovering over a period of time, given the, support from the external agencies, and also with the austerity measures that the governments used to prevent further flips. Similarly, in the case of Sri Lanka also, nothing is lost but a good repair of its finances, followed by liberal imports of fertilizers into their country, and giving a fillip to their agricultural produce, and increasing their agricultural produce at this point of time is what I feel the immediate measures the ruling dispensation needs to undertake.
Thank you, Dr. Sastry. As usual, a very informative session.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.